All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Yo. This is the Max and Mike Show. Mike Spindler, Max Bach. First ever episode, Max and Mike Show. We're happy to have you here. We're live in Stamford, Connecticut at our RE/MAX office. What's going on, Max?
Absolutely. Just starting out with our first episode, I just want to talk about kind of what our show is and what this whole thing is going to be all about. One of the things that we're obviously going to talk about, because we're involved in it, is real estate.
I think that would make a lot of sense for us
exactly.
to definitely touch on that.
But other than that, we're also going to talk about, sales-related things.
Yep.
Also local-related.
Yeah. Best food spots,
Yep.
things like that.
Food, restaurants, local neighborhoods, things going on in the area as well. And then, just like I mentioned in the beginning, like touching base on certain things when it comes to entrepreneurship, real estate, sales, kind of giving you guys an inside scoop of what we're doing and what's going on in the market.
Behind the scenes stuff, what's going on in the market, whatever we got coming up, and it's going to be like a buffet worth of like I don't know, info, right? Like
Absolutely.
We're going to touch on everything. We're going to have soup to salad to the entree. We're going to have everything kind of right in this show. And I think it definitely makes sense to start out with a real estate specific topic. And I think just kind of getting into the business. I mean, one of the things that we get asked a lot is like, give us the kind of rundown on from new agents, like on how do you get into the business and kind of where you start. So I think we might as well start off with something like that, don't you think?
Absolutely. Just being in the business, being in real estate.
Yeah.
One of the most common questions that we get is probably like, how do I get into the business?
Right.
Should I get into the business?
Yep.
Is this the right opportunity for me? To start off, I can tell you a little bit,
Please.
I kind of fell into the business.
Yep.
I didn't have the intention of getting into real estate or becoming a real estate agent. I kind of fell into it, out of school, doing some marketing for a local real estate team, and then slowly just transitioning into the real estate sales role. Probably took the longest time out of probably everybody to get my real estate license.
Really? How long are we talking?
I'm talking about, I was coming up right to the deadline, to the point where if I didn't take the test and complete my classes, I would have to retake the classes again.
Excuse me, that probably happens to so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. But, eventually just ended up getting my license, and one thing to another, just, one deal at a time almost, ended up slowly getting more and more into it, and to the point where, now, both of us kind of being the same position, really like growing our real estate business.
Yep.
Working with clients day in and day out. So that's that's the situation there.
Give me your craziest deal or scenario or something crazy that you've run into as an agent.
I've ran into,
because there's some weird stuff that we run into.
Weird stuff, crazy deals, absolutely, and I most certainly want to talk about that. But before we do that, why don't you tell us kind of how did you get into the business?
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm
Right.
getting too excited. So I kind of stumbled into the business also. I was hooked up with I was paying this guy like $1,000 a month for like this coaching program on how to invest in real estate, and he was doing like these weird strategies on like you call somebody and you say, look, I'll pay you $2,000 a month. And I'll sell your house. And it was just like this kind of like wholesaling type of thing, until I realized I'm wasting $1,000 a month. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm young. I'm 25. I have not a clue in the world about anything real estate related. I don't know what an oil tank, where it is, why is it buried underground? Like, what does that even mean? So like, I was like, all right, let me start from scratch. Let me get my license, and kind of just hit the ground running from there. I got, I think. I was working in the restaurant industry. I was a personal trainer and a strength and conditioning coach. So I was always talking to people, which I think definitely helped me translate and transition into the real estate business, because, we're talking to people all day long. And if we're not talking to anybody, that's an issue. If we're not talking to people on a daily basis.
One thing people tend to have a misconception is real estate is not just go look at houses, go show houses.
Yeah.
Real estate really is a direct sales business.
Yep.
And in sales, it's all about how many people you talk to.
Yep.
It's all about your contacts and you're selling. If you're not talking to people, you're not going to make the money.
Yeah, I love the saying, sales is energy. Because if
Yeah.
you don't bring any energy to the table, no one's going to want to work with you. Like, so that's definitely step one. And then, of course, you have to have a little knowledge backing you up, which kind of leads to the point of why I wanted to learn, about what's going on in real estate. And so I totally agree. All right. Is now a good time to talk about your first deal? Because I'm dying to know.
Yeah, well,
Or
yeah.
at least give me like give me a crazy scenario. Like,
Yeah, so I mean, starting off in the business, I have a couple of interesting stories.
Okay.
But one thing that people, you start to realize as you're getting into the real estate business, taking through the classes, going through everything, and then you start off, working with clients, showing houses. But one thing that real estate school does not teach you is all those things on the job. It's like they don't teach you how to open a lockbox.
that's the biggest. It's crazy how they don't even teach that.
And my story kind of revolves around that. So the first
Couldn't
client,
open a lockbox?
well, I couldn't open the lockbox. I didn't even know how to open a lockbox.
How would you? How, like,
So my first story, my first client that I was working with, we show up at the first house they were supposed to see, and I'm over here, one of those electronic blue lock boxes.
Yep.
Everybody who's probably went to see a house probably has
Yep.
seen one. So especially if you don't know what's kind of how it works, it can
Yep.
be a little bit confusing. I'm going in there trying to get my app, trying to put in like the code. It took me like a minute, but eventually I figured out how to do it. But that's one of those stories where you really learn a lot of things on the job. But that's with regards to my first deal. But the craziest thing,
hit me. I'm ready.
with the houses that we see, I remember one time actually going to see a house for myself,
Right.
to buy for myself.
Okay.
It was an older house. It was nobody was living there. So
Oh, no.
later in the day, walk into the house with my wife. I just kind of like open the door, walk into one room, everything's dark. The moment we start walking into another room, the radio starts playing.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. That was the moment for me where I was like, all right, you know what? I don't care how good this house is. No, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
I was
You
like,
step out after that.
this house is definitely haunted.
Yeah, 100%. It probably was.
I mean, there's a good chance.
You didn't buy it.
No,
Okay,
definitely
good.
not.
Okay, good.
Definitely not. But that's just one of those crazy stories. Just getting into the business and like certain things. There's definitely more crazy stories that we encounter working in the business, but we'll definitely talk about those
Yeah.
later down the line. Why don't you give us, one of yours for?
Like one of the things that just happened to me the other day, like literally like maybe like 2 weeks ago, is I'm showing a property, house is vacant. We go like in the back porch area. There's like an outdoor porch covered, and there's a fully loaded. I swear to you not. There's a fully loaded shotgun, and like just a bunch of crack pipes just sitting there around it. I'm just like. I don't think that was part of the staging plan when they put
definitely
that thing
not.
together. Like,
Definitely not.
And that's one of those. I was like, all right. I looked at my client, who's a good friend of mine, and I'm like, I don't think that this is the right fit, to be totally honest with you. And I think he agreed. But like, we see some crazy things. I love what you touched on. Like, they don't teach you about the lockbox situation. When I'm done with my real estate career, whatever that might be, I'd love to try and change the curriculum for real estate school, because there is so many things that they don't touch on, and they just throw you out to the wolves, and you're expected to know what a septic system is and a well system, and you're supposed to know all these things, but that's not touched on in school, is it? At least the classes that I went to.
No, definitely not. There's really a lot of things. You learn the legal side of the business,
Yes.
as in what you should do and
Yep.
what you shouldn't do.
What to say,
how
what
you
not to
should-
say.
How should you legally treat like
Yeah.
a client relationship? What you're allowed to talk about, what you're not allowed to talk about. But really, the stuff on the job is the stuff that you really learn once you really get into the business.
Yep.
Once you start working with clients, once you start going on appointments. That's the stuff. Even more, once you start putting deals together, once you have
Yeah.
a client buying a house or a client selling a house, that's when you really learn the ins and out of the business and everything how everything's done. And
Right.
There's really is a lot that goes into it.
There's a
regardless
lot,
of
yeah.
whether you're buying or selling.
Excuse me, 100%. I think that you should have to like at least part of like one class. I think should be you following around an experienced agent.
Absolutely. And that's why, for anybody getting into the business, one thing I would very highly recommend, if you're getting into the business, you're new to the business, you don't know how the business necessarily work, join a team. Join a real estate team.
I totally
even
agree.
if it's for,
A year?
for 6 months,
Yeah.
a year, the effect that it's going to have on the longevity of your career and the progress that you make
Yep.
is going to be so exponential. Yes, you're probably going to be making less money to start off. Everything that you're going to learn in the process is going to be so worth it, and it's going to put you so much further ahead.
I agree. I mean, they don't teach you, like, if you're with a team, they're going to show you, all right, here's how you write an offer, here's what escrow is, kind of give you the guidelines and essentially hold your hand, especially on the first couple of deals, to be able to, because this is a huge investment for the clients that you're working with. So you need to make sure that you're not making any mistakes with numbers,
Absolutely.
paperwork, having them sign the wrong thing. Like, you do need to know the ins and outs, and you got to learn somewhere.
One interesting story, actually, I spoke with a client yesterday, and it really, just a conversation that I had with the client really put into perspective, like, how important of a transaction, how big of a transaction it is for somebody's life.
Yep.
It's probably one of the biggest purchases
Yeah.
that anybody's going to make
Yep.
in their life.
Yep.
So it's very important to take that seriously and have somebody on your side that's going to be able to help you through the process. And just, the conversation that I had with a client yesterday, he, one of the best things that anybody could do is actually interview agents when they're starting
Yep.
to look for a place. And
Yep.
this is one of the things that he was doing.
Yep.
Is actually reaching out to some of the top agents in Stanford. Just so happens he connected with me.
Yep. Lucky guy.
Right? So we had a very in-depth conversation, and it was very eye-opening to me because he had so many questions
Right.
about, how many homes did you sell?
Right.
What price range do you work in?
Yep. Those are good questions to ask.
Do you live in Stanford? Do you know Stanford?
Yep.
Very in-depth questions where at the end of it I was almost thinking this is literally what everybody should do
Yep.
when they're hiring an agent.
Yeah.
Don't just go with the first person that you meet. And
And he's lucky that he met you in terms of, like, you probably took the time out of your day, sat there, answered all those questions in detail.
absolutely.
And, I think you obviously have to give the clients, it's not just like how many leads you could get. It's about learning how to have those conversations with people and answer all those questions.
Exactly. And it really goes back to the point of expertise. So for instance, in the grand scheme of things, you and I really haven't been in the business for that
No.
long of a time period. But, I've been in the business in different aspects of it since 2017.
Yep.
And you've been in the business for
2019.
2019.
Yep.
But the thing where we really add the value onto it is because we started off on a team.
Yep.
And just the information, just the value that we were able to acquire
Yep.
from being on a team, just being able to leverage some, for instance, like from our team leader who has over 20 years of
Right.
experience in
Right.
the business, it's a game changer for you and your business. And even though you may not have a ton of experience, that really exponentiates your growth.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it ultimately, all that knowledge is just going to help the clients that you end up working with, anyways. Like,
Well,
that's
the craziest thing, and this is one of the craziest things. I've been in the business since 2017. You've been in the business since 2019. We probably do more business in a year than some of these agents who've
Yep.
been in the business for 20 years
because you
have done in their career.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of part-time agents out there. I just don't think if you're somebody thinking about getting into real estate, I always say this to anybody I talk to, I don't think that this is an industry that you could do part-time. I mean, you have to be available, 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock to take a phone call with a client to talk to them through a difficult situation. You have to be there first thing in the morning, on a Saturday to do a showing. I don't know if it's possible to do. I don't think it's possible to do this job part-time. This is a full-time job.
Absolutely. Well, you actually bring up a very good point, is the amount of time that this really takes up. I don't think people realize how much time.
How many hours a week do you think we're working?
Honestly, I think I'm easily working 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
I mean, just in this week alone, I mean, I'm getting into the office at 8.
Yep.
I'm leaving the office close to 7, 8 o'clock
Yep.
at night
Yep.
because of all the different things
Yep.
that I have to do.
Yep.
But not only that, aside from somebody having a job, for instance, in the corporate world,
Yep.
and I would say the greater majority of people are transitioning from a corporate world setting into the real estate world, your weekends, you end up working your weekends.
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, holidays, birthday parties,
Yep.
events.
No days off in real estate.
There's no days off.
And that's not even to mention, forget about showings and appointments. What about like working through deals? Definitely happens on the holidays. You know, you put in an
Absolutely.
offer, you hear back on Christmas Day. You know, you need to
mean-
you need to answer that phone call.
Just recently, I had a deal that ended up putting together on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
family in the other room
Yeah.
having dinner. I'm only in the other room with a client talking
Yeah.
him through like the different things that
Right.
we have to do, like
Yep.
kind of where we're standing.
Yeah. So I think to just kind of put a cherry on top is I don't think that you could do this job part time.
Definitely not.
And
Definitely not.
So I mean, what type of skill set do you think someone needs to have when they like trying to get into the business?
I don't think it's so much of a skill set. I think it's more of a personality.
Okay.
Honestly, I think you have to be. Number one, I think you have to be very driven,
Yep.
and you have to be very consistent and very disciplined.
Yep.
Because unlike in a corporate world setting where you have a boss telling you what to do,
You're your own boss.
You're your own boss. You know, if you don't make the calls, you don't do what you're supposed to do in a given day. Nobody's going to be hounding you for that.
No.
Nobody's going to be hounding
No.
you for that. It's your responsibility and your responsibility alone. So you really have.
I know
to
my wife would be hounding me though.
That is for sure. Well, you know, that's a motivating factor.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But you know, still, you really have to be very disciplined. You have to be very driven, and you really have to know exactly what you want. Because I honestly think that if you're driven, you're disciplined, and you're consistent, you're gonna be able to work on your skills, which obviously, you know, conversation skills, being able to have the right
Huge.
conversations. I would say sales, but not sales in the sense where you're trying to sell somebody. It's more in the sense where you're advising somebody to make.
You're an advisor.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I hate the sound of real estate salesperson. Can we change that? Like, can we change that on our business cards? Can we put real estate advisors?
Well, I tell that to all of my clients. I'm not here to sell you anything.
Yeah.
I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to advise you through the process. Whether you buy something 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 6 months from now.
Right.
I'm not here to sell you anything.
Right.
I'm advising you through the process, and if I think something's not a good fit for you, if I think a house is not going to work for you, there's some issue from it, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be the first person to tell you to walk away from it.
Yep.
You know.
Or at least know the risks associated with that issue of the house.
Well, absolutely.
and then they can make the decision
full
on whether.
disclosure.
Yeah, full
but
disclosure.
Still, if I think it's not a good decision, will literally like
Yeah.
the same way we're sitting here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I think that there's X and X wrong with this house. I don't think you should buy this house.
Right.
What if you choose to, for one reason or another, proceed? You know, obviously I'm gonna represent you and have your best interest in mind, but you know, I'm gonna tell you what the truth is.
Yeah.
What I honestly think.
Right. Your
you should
professional
do.
opinion.
Exactly.
I think you got to be honest. I think that's a major skill set or a personality.
Well, trust.
Trust, honesty. You have to have that in this business because there's a lot of people out there in our industry, in this area, in this town.
I think trust is huge.
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 No one's going to trust you if you're not honest.
Well, absolutely.
You know.
But developing that relationship, being that trustworthy advisor
Yeah.
during the process is huge. And I would say that's also a big source of where a lot of our business comes from, is because a lot of our clients become like family. You really have to, if you're getting into the business, you have to get into it with the right intentions and really not for the money. You
Yeah.
really have to like what you do, and you have to like real estate, and you have to like working with people 100%.
I mean, that's, yeah, of course, because if you don't like working with people, then this is definitely not the industry for you.
It's one of those things where our team leader, Chris
Yep.
Carrozza.
Shout out Chris Carrozza.
Shout out to Chris Carrozza. One of the things he talks about, if you focus on the activities and doing what you need to do, everything else will come.
Will fall into place.
Everything else falls into place because you have your client's best interest in mind. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're making the calls. you're sending out the emails, you're following up, you're making sure you're that trusted advisor. Everything else falls into place after that.
Yep.
And it's huge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just kind of want to switch topics. I mean, not topics totally, but I'm curious on what was the one thing that you could point to, you said that you learned being in the real estate industry, like that you didn't think you were going to know before getting in?
Honestly, how complicated the transactions are.
Oh, baby.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a perception from the outside looking in where, real estate is this kind of thing where you show the house, somebody likes it, you end up buying it.
Yeah.
But
it seems sexy.
It seems simple, honestly,
Yeah.
from the outside looking in, and that would be my opinion as well.
Yep.
It's a simple thing. It's a simple.
In the grand
I
scheme
go
of it,
see a
yeah.
house, I like it, I put in an offer, I purchase a house.
Yep.
But there's so much more that goes into it, and some of the transactions where you could probably speak onto it, because you recently had you still have a very difficult transaction.
I feel like, the last handful have been very
Yeah.
complicated.
It's just so much more complicated than what it seems
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, it definitely is.
But one example of it is, a transaction like you're having, where the transaction was supposed to close 4 months ago, and it's still in the process of closing.
Yeah.
I, a couple of years ago, had a transaction, especially during the COVID times, where a transaction, we were supposed to close in February. It took us a whole year just working through different issues with like plot plans, boundaries, easements, everything else to make sure everything's situated in place in order to close a transaction. Literally a whole year
That's
to close
crazy.
to close a transaction.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. I would be curious also on, I guess that's the biggest misconception, right? Is like, it also, like you're saying, a year, you didn't get paid for a year. You worked on a transaction for a year. There's time, like you're saying, 4 months. We're not getting paid for those 4 months. Like, we don't get an annual or a salary. You get paid at the end of the transaction. So you have to walk that thing from A to Z and get that to the finish line every single time until you could get that paycheck and put food on the table. So we're not getting paid on an hourly basis here. So
Absolutely.
You have to be smart with your money, of course.
Well, it's the kind of thing is the hours that you work does not translate it into how much money you make.
Right.
We were talking about it earlier. I'm sure you're pretty much in the same boat. We're probably working like 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
We're not getting paid for every single hour that we work.
It would be nice if we were, but
If we were,
Yeah.
we would be pretty well off
Yeah,
right now.
we
We wouldn't have to do a lot of the things that we do.
no.
But it just comes back to it where you really have to love what you do. You can't be focused on the money, and you have to realize this is not an hourly kind of pay job, or like in a corporate setting.
Yep.
Is you put in a ton of hours with I would say the hope
Yeah.
that you're gonna get paid at the end.
You got to will it to the finish line sometimes.
Because you could have a transaction, a deal that's, and I've had this happen to me, that's days before the deal closes and the deal falls apart.
Yeah.
So
for like some crazy issue, like the seller didn't want to move out of the house.
What's that saying? Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yep. It's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
But name a better feeling than that crazy deal finally closing and you getting that chunk paycheck. Like, that is the best feeling.
That is a great feeling, but you know what's even a better feeling for me?
What's that?
Is all the things that I learned from that transaction.
Yeah.
And I'm able to take
The
back.
experience on that, you're now going to have that moving forward with other clients. I'm like, here's what the VA looks for when they're doing with their loans. They don't like cracked windows and things. Like, everything that you learn moving forward is ultimately going to end up helping you and helping your clients that end up working with you moving forward.
The hardest transactions are the best learning opportunities.
Yep.
And honestly, I dread and look forward to the difficult transactions because I know that I'm going to come away from it with so much more knowledge that
Yep.
I'm going to be able to
Yep.
take with me to, the next time I work with a client.
Yep.
I think, one thing to go over is just like, for instance, if somebody was looking into getting into the business, what they should do, I think a better way to put it is if you were looking to start out in the business all over again, like what would be your steps
Yep.
to get into the business?
Getting into the business, I think that like as soon as I get licensed, I think you cannot.
Well, I guess with number one, like let's start like almost like a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
So like number one, like what do you do? The first thing, like you decide you want to be a real estate agent. What's the first thing?
Well,
you do?
first step is you do have to get licensed. Like you have to go to real estate school. Whether we agree with some of the different education and different strategies, you have to get your real estate license. Once you pass that test, then you have to find a brokerage that essentially where you could hang your license. And really from there, I think is the most important is going out, like we've discussed, is finding a team to work for that's going to show you the ropes and show you, like we've discussed, how to write an offer, what escrow is, what contingencies are, exactly step by step on how to show a property and what to look for when looking at houses to point out to your clients. So once you get your license, you choose a brokerage, and at the same time, you kind of choose a team from there.
Absolutely. But with regards to brokers and the team, what do you think somebody should focus on? Should they focus first on the brokerage or first on finding a team?
That's a great point. I think it should be the team.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, we love Remax. We've loved everything since we've been with them. I think the team aspect is way more important.
I 100% agree.
I mean, here's my saying that I've said to any new agent that has said to me, Mike, I'm thinking about getting into the business. I don't care what the commission split is, because 50, 60, 70% of 10 deals is way better than 100% of 0 deals. Yeah. I don't care all day long. However you slice and dice it, it's always better. So with that commission split comes the knowledge and the information and somebody kind of holding your hand and showing you the ropes.
Absolutely. So I think, the next aspect to kind of transition to would be now that you, for instance, decided to get into real estate, everything's ready. Do you think 2023 is a great year to get into the business, and kind of what do you think 2023 is gonna, what's in store for 2023?
There's no doubt that it's not going to be easy. Right, this business is not easy.
It's not like the COVID years, 2020, 2021, 2022.
100%. Deals are going to just be falling off the tree, and you're just going to
interest rates were low. A lot of people.
It's free money out there, So yeah. Everyone was buying, everyone was selling, everyone was taking advantage of it. You really have to take it to the next level, in this market going forward in 2023. But to answer your question, I would say yes, it is a great time, because I think there'll be a lot of agents that have been in the business for 5, 10, 15 years that will be stepping out of the business as we move forward in the next couple of years. So you have a prime opportunity, and I think we look at this for ourselves, prime opportunity to kind of move up the ranks in your marketplace and do more deals, because a lot of people are going to step out because they're not going to want to put in 80 hours a week to do deals.
Historically speaking, one of the best times to really grow a business is during a down year.
Yep.
It's whether regardless of what business you're in, typically if you look at it, some of the best businesses that have been built during those down years, when things might not necessarily be selling like crazy, selling like hotcakes,
mm-hmm.
like they have been in the past couple of years. But I also think coming into 2023, just inventory wise, we're not going to see what we've seen in the past years. Just going into 2023 at the end of the year, if you look at the stats, inventory was down compared
mm-hmm.
with like December of last year, like 25%, which is crazy. Which is honestly, basically what it means is there's going to be less deals to be made in this kind of market. So you're going to have to work that much harder.
Twice as hard to put the deals together. But I think here's where we could educate, here's where our value comes in as agents, in knowing the numbers and knowing the statistics and knowing, if you watch the news, if a client puts on the news someone that may be thinking about buying a house, they would think this is the worst time ever to buy a house, right? But what our job, I think, is when we have these conversations, when we're calling people, when we're knocking on doors, when we're talking to any potential buyer or sellers, is, look, here's what's actually going on, right? If you watch the news, it seems like it's doomsday. But, oh, yes, the rate's 6%, 5-6%, whatever it is when we're recording this. But the banks are offering more incentives now than they were when the rate was 3%. You know, like we've talked about, like a 2-1 buy down program where your interest rate's 2 points less in your first year, and your second year is 1 point less, and the third year goes to whatever the base rate is. Like, there's more incentives now. These are the type of conversations that we're having with our clients. Sellers, I mean, the seller that you and I met with the other day said, this doesn't seem like it's a great time to sell a house.
There's no inventory.
Right, because he's just watching the news.
Yeah.
Right, which seems like it's terrible. No one's buying a house. Wait a second. There's every open house that we've been to. There's a line out the door. Right, people will always buy real estate. I don't care what type of market that we're in. So, especially with the rent being as high as it is.
It comes back to one of the kind of the points that we touched back on. I think in 2023, if you're getting into the business, you really have to focus on delivering the value to your clients, knowing what the interest rates are, knowing how to, the different workarounds, like you mentioned, whether it's a 2-1 buy down or, it's a creative,
a 15-year ARM or something like that.
Yeah, creative like
that.
Adjusted rate mortgage. Or, there's really being that source of information and really educating your clients, which is a lot of what we're doing nowadays. Is whenever we're talking to clients is educating them, really educating them and talking to them what their different options are with interest rates. How they could potentially get into a house. The other thing that people aren't talking about, they're talking about the high interest rates, but there's also some of these houses that have been sitting longer in the market.
Yeah.
You're getting them under the market price.
Right.
Which is, go back a year, go back.
That wasn't happening whatsoever. That wasn't even a thought.
Almost a multiple bid situation, every single house.
Yeah, no matter what the price was. So yeah, you have a ton of leverage in this market as a buyer. You have a ton of leverage as a seller. You have to, as an agent, someone getting into the business, new, young, old, you have to lead with value all day long. Know the data. Here's the biggest thing I think for us and what we've learned over the last couple months and what we started doing is we've started previewing inventory. We know if you ask us what's going on in Stanford, like how many houses are in the market in Stanford and Norwalk right now between 500 and 700? What did we say? It was 11. 11 houses. Like, you have to know these numbers, kind of memorize off the top of your head, and be that knowledge agent. And I think clients will kind of appreciate that as opposed to someone who has, who's doing it part time that may not know all the numbers and have a feel of what's going on in the marketplace on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And then, just going, further, just going into 2023, in my opinion, it's like one of the questions that we get, is this a great time to buy? Is this a great time to sell?
Yep.
And it's the kind of thing where it's a great time to do both.
It is.
Because if you look at the kind of long term, what's going to happen is inventory is very low as it is right now. Really don't see that inventory really exploding that much more going into 2023.
No, definitely not.
Let's just say worst case scenario, we have a recession. The economy really tanks.
Yep.
You're not going to sell your house with a 3% mortgage. Right?
Right.
So that's still going to keep your inventory low. And the other thing that people don't realize is, unlike real estate, unlike the stock market or investments, you don't necessarily have to buy a stock or sell a stock or put your money into like some kind of investment, but there are essentials like food, water, and a roof over your head.
Yep.
Right. So when it comes to a question of your family, your kids, they need a place to live. There's, regardless of what the interest rates are, regardless of what's going on, you're gonna work to provide a roof over your family's head.
Yep.
Right. It's
no doubt about it. And if you look at the charts and the data, if you hold real estate for a 7 to 10 year period, like, it's gonna go like that no matter what. Like, the only time and look, maybe there might be some ebbs and flows throughout that 10-year period, but if you hold it long enough, it's gonna go like that. So I think the
perspective really matters in this.
Absolutely, it does.
Because if you're gonna live in a house which on average people probably live in a house for 5 years, but if you're gonna be in a house for 5 to 10 years, possibly more, some people end up living their whole entire lifetime in their house. Yeah. The market's gonna correct. You're gonna be in good hands. But the other thing too, which I've seen even prior to COVID, of people who were in the process of buying, but they thought the market's gonna correct. The prices are going to go down. I've seen those same people starting in 2019 when prior to COVID, then COVID hit in 2020, prices going up. Oh, we're going to wait because we think the price is going to go down.
Right. And they missed out on that 3% interest rate.
Well, they missed out. They missed out on the 3% interest rates. They missed out on the lower prices because
it's only went up.
2021,
Yep.
prices go up again.
Yep.
Oh, we're going to wait. And then, going into 22, what happened in 22? Prices went up again.
Yep.
But the other thing that happened in 2022, interest rates went up. And when interest rates went up, all these people who, let's just say they were thinking of buying a house, $700,000 house, all of a sudden their budget has got cut in half.
Yeah.
So they can't even get the house that they were looking
And what have they been doing in the meantime, those people? They've been renting this whole time, and they've been paying an astronomical amount in rent, and they've been paying their landlord's mortgage down,
and
opposed to paying their own.
The other, interesting conversation that I had with somebody who kind of been on that fence for the past 8 years, they were like, man, have I bought way back then, I already would have paid off half of my mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
I would have.
That's a crazy.
And made some money on it. And the other thing, just touching base on rents.
Mm-hmm.
If you look historically speaking on the rents have only gone up.
Yeah.
And they've only continued to go up and
Yeah.
up and up. And that's just money that you're literally throwing away.
Yep.
You get no tax benefits for it. You get, you're not building any equity in things. It's just money that you're putting in your landlord's pocket, and you're getting no benefit for it.
And a lot of people and a lot of the clients that I talk to, and there's 1,000,001 videos on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube on this, but you don't need 20% down to buy a house. A lot of people are like, I'm saving up for 20. How many different programs are there to be able to buy a house with 3.5% down, with 5% down? I mean,
I have a client right now
Right.
purchasing with 5% down.
Right.
Right. I mean, speaking of that, one of the biggest misconceptions, I need 20% down.
That's what I'm saying.
You could buy with as low as 3% down.
Yeah, and look, are there benefits to buying with 20% down? Yeah, absolutely. There's no PMI, and your mortgage payment, your monthly payment's going to be a lot lower because you're putting 20% down. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good investment if you don't put 20% down. You have to wait for 20% on a $500,000 house is $100,000. $100,000. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But the other thing to put into perspective, when you talk about building wealth, generational wealth, I mean, I'm sure you probably know this, but what do you think, out of what sector has the most wealth and the most millionaires have been made out of?
Real estate.
So
all day long.
Absolutely. So the sooner you attain at least something like a tangible piece of real estate, the closer you are to building that generational wealth.
I heard this the other day I was watching a Tom Ferry podcast or listening to a Tom Ferry podcast, and one of the agents that he was interviewing was talking about, instead of doing a buyer consultation with somebody, and from the client standpoint, like consultation, it doesn't sound like sexy and fun and exciting as the home buying process should be. Call it like a home buying investment strategy. Because no matter what, even if you're buying a single family home to live in, it is an investment, right? So you want to make sure you're buying the right place, getting it at a good price in a neighborhood that you think is going to appreciate, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like those are the conversations as a new agent, somebody getting into the business, conversation that you and I are having on a day-to-day basis with the clients that we're showing properties to. And I think that needs to continue because if you watch the news, it seems like it's doomsday.
Absolutely. The other thing I was just going to add to it, especially regardless if you're buying a house or condo,
whatever it may
for the short or the long term, one of the things that I always do for my clients, and I recommend my clients do as well, is when you're buying a house, consider what the rental income from it would be if worst case scenario you need to rent it out.
Yeah, it's a get out plan.
It's a get out plan because long term wise, like we were talking about, real estate value goes up, so the longer you hold it, the more likely you are to make more money from it.
But short term,
there's a little bit, let's just say your job changes, you need to move across the country, whatever. If the real estate market's not doing so well, you are in so much better opportunity if you could rent your house out for top dollar because it's in the right location. It's, what some people like, and it's something that makes a great investment.
Yeah.
It gives you that plan B that otherwise, if you were just focused on buying a house that you like, that you wouldn't necessarily have, or the option you wouldn't necessarily have. So I always like to look at it, especially when working with clients, especially going into 2023, is from that perspective of, down the line, especially, like first-time home buyers, whatever. If we're buying a condo, buying a townhouse, or even like a smaller single-family house, if you were to rent it out now or down the line, would this make a good investment for you?
And I'll just add on to that same exact point is another conversation that we as agents can have to help our clients make that investment decision is like, what are some upgrades that could be done to the house or condo, whatever, that's going to add value to the place in the
sometimes it's so simple.
It's so simple as changing the countertops, taking out the carpet and putting in hardwood floors. Like I had a client ask a great question, a client who had bought a house a couple of years ago, and he asked me, do you think that solar panels add value to the property?
That's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question that I don't think there's enough data on. It's certainly, I don't think it could hurt.
But you
right?
know what?
But
just to kind of like touch on that like last point with regards to that, I do think it is going to add value to a house, especially what's happening now with electrical bills going up.
Yeah.
Since January 1st, for anybody that didn't know, your electrical bill pretty much doubled and went from 12 cents per kilowatt.
Oh, that hurts.
Went from 12 cents per kilowatt to 24 cents per kilowatt for the delivery charge.
Yep.
So I think that really is going to spur a lot of people to put more value on having solar panels because their bill at the end of the day is going to be significantly less.
But I think the point that we're both trying to make is that those are conversations from the investment side of it as an agent that you need to know that are specific value adds if you're looking to sell in the short term.
Absolutely.
Updating a kitchen, minor things like that, and kind of what people are looking for. I think that's something that as a new agent, and you have to kind of have those things in mind.
And, the other thing too, each one of these situations is unique.
Completely different.
So anybody listening to this, if you're in the Connecticut, New York market, if you want to have like a more in-depth conversation to talk about kind of what your current situation is and what would work best for you, like really like put together a plan, which we do pretty much with every single one of our clients. Definitely be open to having that conversation.
100%.
So
exactly how we're having this conversation right now is what we offer every single client. It's not just like, hey, you call in, okay, you want to see a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. We're sending you listings and that's it. There's a more in-depth conversation, when you work with us at the end of the day.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to reach out directly to either me or Mike,
or both of us.
Or both of us.
Yep.
We'd be more than glad to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
And kind of give you a little bit more insight into it. But other than that, just to finish up this episode here, I personally think, if you're selling, you should sell because you should be probably putting your house on the market because the inventory is so low and the buyers are still out there. If you're buying, you should really be looking for good opportunities because, with low inventory, prices most likely will continue to rise.
Yeah, that's not going to change anytime soon.
And interest rates going up, you're probably going to be able to afford less. And not only that, you're not going to be, your monthly payments are going to go up as well.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll just kind of wrap up with, going back to where we started with new agents, even with all that being said, everything we've discussed, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's still a great business to get into because there's no cap. There's no cap on this business.
And there's no bottom.
There's no bottom either, right? Which is the risk that's associated with it. But I think that any new agent that has any questions for, I think you or I were also happy to kind of take those questions on too because, we've been through a couple of different markets since we've started.
Yep.
And, as we speak, obviously the market's changing on a day-to-day. So we'd be happy to have those conversations as well.
Absolutely. So anybody wants, definitely reach out. But other than that, we will see you guys on our next episode. We're just, we're probably not going to be talking about how to get into real estate. I mean, for sure. But we're going to have more interesting stories. And then stay tuned because we're also going to be, covering local food spots, restaurants, things to do. Pretty much anything local, like you said, a full buffet
style, man.
Buffet style kind
Absolutely.
of show. So we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.